Yeah, what progress did anybody make on setting up, or what questions do people have? We can also do contributions directly through GitHub, so you don't have to like locally install anything. Okay, got people just watching. And we've got a couple more people still joining, getting audio. Welcome, Alex. Yeah, so we don't have anything super formal prepared, so it's kind of a lot of question and answer, whatever works for you. We can kind of go through some of the how to contribute via GitHub, but did anybody get anything set up, or should we go through kind of like the easy GitHub contributions to start?
Mark, this is Dawn. It would help me if you go through the easy contributions. Start us from scratch here.
Let's do that. Okay. So this is GitHub. So in order to get on GitHub, and let me find, so we do have, if we go into the help manual, there's a kind of brief tutorial on what you need for setting up GitHub. So if we go into the help manual, and there's a contributing to the help manual section, which also includes creating a GitHub account. So you can watch this, but let's kind of go through some of the steps. So has anybody used GitHub before?
This is Dawn. I have briefly, but it's been a while.
Okay. Jonathan says he has. Jenny has. Okay, so if you have a GitHub account, you will sign into GitHub, you will go to My Repository, and then you should be able to fork it by clicking that button, I believe. If anybody wants to like go through that process so that we can see it, it's hard for me to fork my own repository, but we can. So some things that we will want to see. So you will have your own copy of the code, which then you can work with and do your own thing, so you don't have to worry about, I'm making this change, am I going to completely break everything for everybody else? You won't. The idea is that you have your own copy so that you can do whatever you want to it, and then you put in what GitHub calls a pull request, and that pull request will allow us to synchronize those changes. So basically you will say, hey, I made some changes that I like. Would you please incorporate them into the main code base? And I take a look at them and say, sure. And then they get released to everybody at the next release. We can actually, we've got some time. Let's go ahead. I will sign out here, and let's create just I will create a test account. So we're just going to do, we'll create we'll make sure we create a password that I have some idea what it is for later. Okay. So you'll go through, you will create your account. We will do a puzzle apparently. We will pick a spiral galaxy, which I'm assuming that's what that is, and that's another spiral galaxy. And we have now created an account. Oh my goodness. We will enter the code that we got emailed.
Mark, as you're looking for your code, do you tend to use the GitHub Desktop?
I do use GitHub
Okay.
Desktop. It's just easier.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, that's another install.
yeah,
We'll need to get
yeah,
on our local machines.
yeah. The GitHub Desktop's really nice. And most of my development has been done on Windows. Kirsten uses Macs. I don't know if anybody's using Linux for development. I guess Nashville's been doing some development just on their test server, so they use it that way. So some people are using command line as well. So now let's go to, we're going to skip this for now. We're going to go to Aspen Discovery, and then we can say fork this. Or we will fork a copy to our account. So that will make a complete copy of this. So by default, so up here in the upper left, we're seeing the current version of code it's the version that we're currently working on. So 2109 is the version that we're currently working on. You can see what version is installed for your site by looking down at the very bottom in the footer. So if we went to like Swan site, we can see down at the very bottom, it says 210802. So we've done a couple of just little patch releases since the last release. And 210900 is what we're currently working on. So if we wanted to go through and modify the code, we can do that through GitHub if we're doing easy things. If it's anything where we're modifying like the PHP or the Java code or something that we want to do more testing on before deploying, I would suggest like you want to copy this down to your local computer first. But let's go into the code. So the code directory is where the code is. So we'll go into code. We have a few directories here. So Aspen app is where the mobile app that we're building, all of the code for that lives. And then we've got a bunch of different export jars. So Access 360, CarlX, Cloud Library, each of the e-content vendors and ILSs that we connect with get one of those. Cron does background tasks for us. So it'll do things like updating reading history in the background, cleaning up book covers, that kind of thing. The big stuff, though, is in web. So web is where all of the front end is. And that's the area that's easiest to contribute to. It's PHP code, it's the README files, it's the help manual. So let's look. We've got a few things here. So the most important ones are interface, which has all of the templates. The manual is where the help manual is. Release notes are where all the release notes are. And then the services. So the services are where the code that drives each page are. So Aspen's pretty easy to navigate. So like anything here, if we go to a page, let's just click on Twilight. So basically we've got grouped work and then home. So grouped work, the ID of the work, and then home. Those correspond then to a service. So we've got a grouped work category, which is the first part of that URL. And then there is a home.php file. So that is the file that runs when we view that page. And then there is a corresponding, if we go back to web and go into interface, there is a corresponding in themes, responsive, grouped work. The template, the name of the template might be a little bit different, so it's normally not home. If you look at the service, it'll tell you which templates are being loaded, but in this case, it's full record. So That's all of the code for that. But let's go back and go back to code web. So Aspen Discovery code web. Let's go into the user manual. This is the easiest thing to contribute to. So one of the things that we were noticing, or Jonathan noticed this morning, was, hey, in the help manual, we have our documentation for installing on Windows, which was missing a link to the actual repository. So there it says install Aspen Discovery code by cloning the repository. So first we need to fork it. So let's just go through and update this. So we will say, and I'm just going to open for comparison purposes what we had on Linux. So there, got Windows, there's Linux. There we go. Check out the current branch. And this is where we're actually cloning the repository. So let's go ahead and update this and we'll get a little bit more information. So these help manual pages, you can always tell which file to edit because it says help manual and then the page is actually the file name. So we're going to be looking for installing-aspen-windows. So installing Aspen Windows, we can click into that and then we can just click the edit. So we will click edit this file. This is all Markdown. So it is important, like if you're creating your own web page, to go through and you'll want to make sure that the name is set. The name shouldn't have spaces or any special characters in it. So uppercase, lowercase are fine. Dashes, underscores are fine, and then it should end with .md with the MD being capitalized. And then anytime we refer to that, we're going to have the page equals the name of the file without the .md. So here we can say, let's go ahead and customize this. So we're going to say fork of the main. And if we want that to be linked, we can put, so the name of the link is in brackets and then the destination, which in this case is exactly the same, goes within parentheses. So we've made those changes. We can commit the changes. So that's committing them to the 21.09 branch. So there is a little bit of trick where you will want to make sure that you are on the same branch that we are, which after release, we typically put that new branch out like same day the release goes out or next day. So we'll commit those changes. So I'm committing to my 2109 branch. This has not updated the main code. So this is only updating my local copy of it. Then I can do a pull request that says, hey, I would like to incorporate that. So here we can say create a pull request. We're going to do a new pull request. So we're able to merge. We're going to automatically merge that. So we're saying we're going to go from my repository, my test repository, to the official branch. So we will just hit create pull request. This goes through and gives us a summary of the changes. So it's just saying, hey, we added that one line. Create the pull request, and then give it a little bit of a description. So we can just say, added a link to the GitHub repository. Create the pull request. So that has created that pull request. This hasn't been approved yet, so let's log out, and we'll log back in with my main branch. So I'll go in. So now I see in my main code, I've got a pull request that's called update installing Aspen Windows. So now I can easily just say, so I'm going to go through, I will review what files have changed. This can take anywhere from a couple of minutes to a couple of hours, depending on how complicated it is. So I will say review the changes. I can compare those, comment, approve, request changes. So depending on how complicated it is, I may request some changes or that kind of thing. Then we will go through and look at this. So I'm going to approve those changes and merge that. So now that has been merged into 210900. It hasn't been deployed yet anywhere because we've just created the code and merged it in. Let's see. Let me pause sharing and I will log into that screen. If I can find my Zoom bar. And then we can deploy. So I find that. While I'm logging into that computer, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Find that server. Okay, so I'm going to pull this latest code onto the server, which will update us to 210900. So let's go. So the first thing that we need to do after that code is pulled, here, I can actually show you that process too. So let's do a new share. So this is our interface into the server itself. So we have the ability to say, we're on the server. All I did was go to my Aspen Discovery directory, pulled the latest code. There's two ways kind of to update a server, we use different depending on kind of where we are in the stage. You can either just pull code or in the install directory. So if you're setting up locally, you can do this as well. There is a, this might be hard to see with the colors. There is a upgrade script. So basically we can say upgrade, we give it the name of the server and then what version we're on, and that allows us to easily upgrade to the next version, and it takes care of kind of stepping through things and doing some of the common like just maintenance tasks. So after we pull code, okay, let's share again. So now we're back on the server. The one thing that we do always need to check for if we're doing local updates is running database maintenance. In this case, there's none. Especially if you're doing a lot of development, there will be changes to the database structure that come out regularly. So just every time you upgrade, you just kind of need to check and make sure that you've run database maintenance. But now that we've pulled, we can refresh our help manual. So let's just go back into our help manual, and we can look at our page for setting up and installing on Windows, and we can see that that line that we created is now available. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and yeah, what questions do people have? So.
Mark, this is Dawn again from Swan. So currently, do you deploy for all of your customers, and do you see that changing down the road?
We deploy for all but one customer that wants to deploy their own. And I don't really see that changing. So especially if we're hosting the server, we'll always do that deployment for people that are self-hosted. It's kind of up to you if you want to deploy or wait or deploy yourself, but we're always willing to do it for everybody. So the default would be we deploy unless you don't want us to.
Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So if anybody wants to like test doing a help manual change, or if people want help getting repositories cloned or making a commit or seeing how that works, I'm happy to do that. Kirsten, is there anything, put you on the spot, anything you can think of that we need to talk about with that process, or any gotchas?
No, unless you're using a pull bot.
Yeah, so Kirsten's got a pull bot, so it's always looking for changes to my repository, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is to make it easier to stay in sync. So it's actually a good call. Let's go through the other direction on this. So if I have made a change, so I'll show real quick. Let's find something that I can check in now. So I will share my screen and we can kind of show the opposite direction. So this is GitHub Desktop. Sorry, the colors on this might be hard. So I can see here, so this is my local Aspen Discovery instance. You will save. So after you install the GitHub Desktop, you can say you will clone a repository and just enter the name of your local repository. So this will be your repository. So you would have whatever your name is / Aspen-Discovery. For Windows, it is much easier if you clone it to C web. So a lot of the install scripts expect that it is going to be installed to web. It can go other places, but all the documentation is just going to expect that, at least for now. For Mac, so with Mac, there were some gotchas. I'm trying. Kirsten, where did you wind up having to put it?
I don't know. I'm looking through my preferences and I don't even have an option.
Okay.
To put it somewhere.
So Mac doesn't like putting things in the root directory. It may have just gone to user local, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So just user local to make it easy. So then with GitHub Desktop, I can see what branch that I'm currently on, so I can change that as we get new branches, you can change that. I can see that there's changes, so I can say, oh, somebody else made changes. So I can pull those changes to my local computer. And then let's find something we can check in. So I'm seeing all I did here was change a comma here. I don't really want that change. So if you make a mistake, you can always easily discard a change too. So we can say, yeah, we don't need that change. So it's just deleting that one change from the one file. I don't have a good change. Let's make a new change. So I'm currently working on a whole bunch of e-commerce stuff that's not done yet, as well as some changes to how grouped work indexing works to make things a little bit more efficient and reduce some memory usage. I'm not quite ready to check any of that in yet, so we'll just make a new change. So we'll show you. So this is Phpstorm as soon as I share. So this is Phpstorm. I'm going to close all of these files. I highly recommend Phpstorm. It is a paid product. It's on the order of, I think, $150 a year for the first year and like 50 to 100 after that. In terms of efficiency, I normally make that up like the first day that I've paid for it because it is really cool. So if you open a project, so you can open, here, let's just, so you can open a project. I've got my default workspace checked in so that basically you can get set up and running with Phpstorm super quickly. You can just load that workspace. But then this is allowing me to modify the things on my computer and then push them to my repository. So here, same deal. In this case, I am just looking at the Aspen Discovery code web directory, and we've got the same thing. So here I've got the manual, I've got the services that we talked about, the interface. So if I go into the manual and I can scroll down and find that same installing Aspen on Windows, we can also look at the installing Aspen on Linux. In this case, it gives me like a preview on the right, or I can just view the raw code on the left. You can kind of do it either way, or you can just view the preview. So it's kind of a nice way to do it. So if I wanted to, we can say, hey, let's repeat the same step over in the installing Linux page. So I'm just going to get rid of the preview here. Well, so here we'll say install Git, install the Aspen Discovery code. So here we did a little bit that says if you're doing development, create a clone of the Git or a fork. Create your own fork of the main Git repository. And let's just link that in here. So we're going to say this is okay. So that's that. We can view the preview as well. So there's our preview. Let's see, I'm going to just put the main as part of that term as well. So then I'll save it, and I can go back to GitHub Desktop. And we'll share that. Okay, so now I can see, I'm going to uncheck everything just so that we don't see other things. And then I'm going to find the manual, C web manual, installing Aspen Linux. So here it will tell me what my changes are. And I can say, so just like we were making a commit before where it said, give us your name and your description, it's the same kind of thing. So we can say, give it a name and a description here. So I'm just going to update help manual, and we'll just say added a link to the Git repository. Then we will commit from here. And push that. So now, since this is going to my main repository, I don't have to create a pull request. But if you did need to, so under branch, you can say create pull request, which I guess just takes you straight over to GitHub. So it'll be that same process. So now let's go back to GitHub. So going back to GitHub, I don't have a pull request because I did it, but we can see that it was changed. So if we look at our code, we can see the last change that was made, which was updating the help manual, one file changed, one addition, one deletion. So we can see what the differences are. And then that code can get pulled again to, so we'll jump back onto the server here. So we're going to pull those changes again. So we're going to pull 2109, which should just have one change now. Takes it a little bit to get all of the changes. So there we can see that there was one file changed and what the changes were. And then when we go back to, let's go back to Aspen. So now that it's been pulled, so now when we go to the help manual and go down to installing on Linux or Mac OS X, we can see that we've added the link to the main Git repository. So questions on any of that? So yeah, so contributing to the help manual is pretty easy. Let's see. What do people want to talk about next? Kirsten, anything else you can think of for things that people would need to know for like just basic help manual contributions? Nothing else. One other thing I will note, let's do a new share. So in the repository, the other thing that we do try to update with each change, especially a major change, is the release notes. So we've got the manual. We've also got the release notes. These are similarly titled. So it's just the version number .md. Again, it's something that we'll just create by default when we create the new release. So we will have 21.09.00.md, which is our 2109 release notes. This just gets automatically loaded. So it is good practice to put in what changes are being made. So we can just say updated the help manual to include links to GitHub. We tend to try to break these up and reference ticket numbers just to make it easy for people to understand. Yeah. And then we would commit that file as well. So if we go back into GitHub, we can say new share and back to GitHub Desktop. So there it's, oops, not that file, this file. So we're just saying updated the help manual. Explore previous change. And then as we deploy that, our release notes are changed, but just that lets everybody kind of know what we're doing to make it easy. Has anybody started installing? So it sounds like nobody's started installing yet. So then there's probably nobody's hit any roadblocks. Does anybody else have any other questions? We can also end a little bit early. We're going to have another session on Friday. So if people in the meantime want to play with forking the code and contributing something to the help manual, then we can, if you run into any obstacles, we're happy to help out with any obstacles that you might have. Oh, we were also going to sign into GitHub again and just see the process of pulling code back. Let's make sure to do that too. So now that I've forked the code, let me go back and share. So we'll log back into my new account. So I'm going to log out as myself and sign back in with that Mark Bywater account. So we'll sign in. So now that I've made a couple of changes, so I'm going to go back to that repository that I had forked. So the trick now is that I need to update because we have a new changes in the kind of master repository. We need to say fetch those. So we're going to click the fetch upstream button. So we can compare our differences. So we can click compare there and we can see, okay, the only differences are we changed the installing Aspen Linux file. We changed the README file. So I like both of those. I'm happy with those. So we can create the pull request from here, or if we didn't want to see the changes, we can also just say fetch upstream and then fetch and merge. So either way, so we'll do the fetch and merge. So merged, fast forwarded. So now if we look at our code and web and manual, we can look at our installing Aspen Linux was the file that we changed, and we can see, okay, yes, those have been changed. Yeah. Any questions on any of that? I know a lot of this, it's kind of hard until you do it. So, so if anybody wants to do it now, I'm happy to stay on. If anybody has issues, or if anybody wants to try to do setup now, I'm happy to help them out.
And all that setup instruction is in the help documentation, right, Mark? Just what you were
Yep.
updating now. Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. And then Jonathan was asking tips on installing Aspen on Windows in a non-standard directory other than CWeb. What would have to change? And any specific requirements for the WAMP setup. So I like Bitnami. So if their site is kind of hard. I even just Google Bitnami WAMP, and that'll take you to the right place. So there we can say install or download WAMP. So right now, we haven't quite upgraded to PHP 7.4 yet, and probably we'll just skip that and jump up to PHP 8. We just need to do some testing with it. So you'll just download the PHP 7.3 and install it. That will create a directory. It's normally C Bitnami, and you can update all of those files, and creates a database for you, creates PHP and Apache and MySQL. So it's a really easy way to get going. If you don't want to put it in CWeb, let's just see. So it's not too bad. There are some config files. So if we look at, let's share. So we'll go back into Phpstorm. So when you create a site, so there's two ways to create. Well, there's one way to create a site. So basically you install Aspen, and then you will run in the install directory. There is a create site PHP file that will kind of take you through the entire process of setting up. Then if we look at the default directory, so that will create a sites directory for you. So that will be in Aspen Discovery sites, and then you'll give it a site name. So like I've got all of the ones that I've been testing with. That creates a config file. So, and there's a variety of paths in here. The installer will take care of customizing those to be Windows paths. So here there's a template Windows and template Linux. So it'll create a config INI for you that is web Aspen Discovery or C web or C data. So, so you would need to go through, and after you install, so like here's our local configuration. So basically you would just need to configure all of those. So instead of being C web, it would be D web, or it could be a different, a completely different path. There is also a config.pwd.ini, which has some of the passwords. So the big thing is the database password, because we have to store that someplace so that we can get into the database. So, and the idea is that the config.password is anything that's not shareable publicly. So, as well as some of those get stored in the database. But does that answer your question, Jonathan? Yeah. Okay. So, pretty easy, but definitely some changes. As you're creating things like sideloads, you'll just want to watch it and be sure that you've got the right directories being set up. It also assumes that you have a /data or a cdata directory where things like MARC records and that kind of thing get deployed, and that's where Solr gets deployed. By default, Solr is going to run on port 8080. That's fine on pretty much every installation. If you have multiple installations of Aspen, which most people won't, you can change the Solr directory or the Solr port. We can get you the connection info. So if you're trying to connect to a locally hosted or to a Koha instance that we're hosting for you, we can get you that connection information. So if you want to just open a ticket, Jonathan, we can get you that connection information. We will need to know your IP address as well, I think, so that we can open the database to just that one, to your one IP address. What else? Any other questions? People excited to contribute? Good. Yeah, it's fun to get more and more contributors. So.
Actually, we gotta run to another meeting, an Aspen meeting for our libraries. But
okay.
Thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Good. And then Jonathan asked for stepping through a basic install of Aspen. Yeah, let me see what I can do. So after you have installed, so if I pick up after you have cloned your repository, is that okay, Jonathan? Okay, so we've cloned our repository. In this case, it is installed to CWeb. So now I typically just jump into a command line. I'm not going to be able to get through all of this because I don't have connection information for anybody right now that is not set up already. So if we go to CWeb, we're going to go to Aspen Discovery and install. So we can see what everything is there. So we've got the, oh, actually, this is not where we want to be. So I need to go to, oh no, I'm sorry, this is where we want to be. So now I'm going to run phpcreatesite.php. This is going to step us through the process to create a site. So we can give whatever information. So typically this would be like for Arlington, I would call it like arlington.localhost or something because I'm setting it up locally. So let's just call this bootcamp.localhost. So then we can just call this Aspen Developer Bootcamp. And the title of the site is going to be the same thing. And we're going to access this at http bootcamp.localhost. In this case, we are running on Windows. Oh my goodness. So this is the problem. So I have a whole bunch of these sites set up. So I never use 8080. Let me see if I can figure out what my next one is. 81, 80, 81, oh. So if you have two, you can have two installed at the same time. They just can conflict. I think 8113 is my next one. Okay, so I'm going to run this on 8113. So if you're using Koha, it's going to step through additional questions to ask for connection information. So it's going to ask you for database connection information, for client information, just to make kind of the setup go a little bit easier. We don't have that now for other ILSs. So far, it's just Koha. Kind of to show how some of the other stuff works, I'm going to not do Koha. So I'm just going to say, we're just going to say this runs on other right now. So it's just not going to prompt me. It's going to create a default configuration. This is going to be other as well. So none of my OPAC or none of my ILS connection information is going to work, but that's fine. So we can enter all of our configuration information. The database name is going to be Aspen. And developer Bootcamp. We give it a name. I'm going to leave the password blank for now. And we're going to say this is running in America/Denver. And we can give it a password. So I'm just going to give it a password of Aspen for now. So we create one default login to Aspen just so that we can get in if we don't have an ILS configuration. And then it goes through and sets all of this up. Oh, it's not going to work. So it's not going to work because I did not give it the proper database. Hold on. So I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to run through all of that again, except I'm going to use my actual database password. And then we can see the next phase.
Do you want to show how to make a database?
So it's going to create one itself.
Oh, okay. Right.
Right. But we can show the setting up all of the sites and configurations and that kind of thing. Yeah, so it automatically sets up the database for you and all kinds of cool stuff. So it goes through, it is now busy creating the database. It's going to set up all of the directories properly. Oh, that might be the other. So the create site's going to assume if you're installing on Windows where it is installed. So what you might want to do is set it up on C web and then move it. Might be the easiest way to do it, because otherwise the installer is not going to work quite right. So at the end of this, it is going to give us some additional instructions. Let me just make sure that like passwords aren't being shown. Okay. So at the end, it says, hey, include this file in your httpd conf file, add the bootcamp.localhost to the hosts file, restart Apache, then you can log in, run database updates, set all of your libraries and locations up. This error is because it doesn't like Solr. So you get a couple of errors there that you can basically ignore, but basically you'll have to restart Solr separately. So the next step, let's stop the share. We'll go into okay. So let's share. So I just use Notepad++ for my basic file editing. You can use whatever you want. On Windows, the hosts file is hidden pretty well. It is in C Windows System 32 drivers etc hosts is the name of the file, and I think the etc directory is hidden, so you have to like make sure that you have permissions to view everything. You have to edit it as an administrator. But then once you do, you can just say, okay, 127.0.0.1 is, what did I call it? Bootcamp.localhost. And we will save that. I am not an administrator, so just a moment while I run this as administrator. Find that again. Okay. So we will share that again. Okay. So now I can save that. So that's my bootcamp.localhost. And then in your httpd conf, which this will depend on where you install WebStack or where you have Apache installed. So C, for me, it's C Bitnami, WAMPstack 7, blah, 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 Apache conf, and then httpd.conf. And then you can just drop this file in. So it tells you what file to create. So we're just going to say include this file. So there, we're going to include that. And then we restart Apache, which is going to depend on your setup. Let's see if I can find this easily. So I'm just going to Bitnami and my install of WAMP. And then I'm going to, they've got a manager Windows program to manage that. So let's share that. Okay, so we can just say manage servers, web server. We're just going to restart the web server. Which hopefully I don't have any errors in any of this. Oh. Okay. Should be going. Okay, so it has now restarted. So let's see how this did. New share. Okay, so now we are going to go to bootcamp.localhost. We need to go to, yeah. Okay, so it is installed. We are getting an error because we haven't run any of our updates. So we need to sign in, which we can do with that Aspen admin. You can remember me or not, depending on what you want to do. So we'll sign in, and then we will go to Aspen administration and database maintenance. And the first time you run this, there is going to be a bazillion of them. So we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom here. We will hit run selected updates. This might take a minute or two. Okay. So it's going to go through, do all of the things that it needs to do to upgrade all of the settings, and then as soon as that's done, it'll refresh the page. But it's doing some big things, so it might take a minute or two here. Let's see. While we're waiting for this, anybody else? Any other questions? Or we'll go through the how to update the account profiles and that kind of thing. And then because you'll have it installed locally, you can actually look at the database structure and all that kind of thing to see what all is installed and where and that kind of thing. Yeah, and you can install the ILS connection information after the PHP installation script. So I'll show you. So basically we will, okay, so there does not help that I clicked that twice, so everything's gonna fail. Or a lot of things failed. So if I was doing this, I'd kind of go through and look to see what was failing. Generally, it's things like, hey, I already clicked this, so those columns already exist. Not the end of the world. To do the rest of the configurations now, so I would go into my account profiles is the first thing that I'm going to need to do. I will create a second account profile. So this admin is just, it just allows that Aspen admin to log in. I will create another one called ILS. You will choose which ILS you want to support, and then you will give it your driver. So, and all of the OPAC URLs and web service. So these will depend on the ILS. So like, they're not all required. So database information will be the database configuration. Some ILSs require SIP2 to do the integration. So like CarlX, we don't have APIs to do everything, so we use SIP2 for some of it. Some of the API information, these will all vary. If you need help with that, let us know. Or if you don't have it or that kind of thing. And then you'll give it a record source of ILS. I will try saving this. I don't think it's going to work, but we will see. I don't think I've got all the required fields. Save those changes. Okay, so it's blank. This is not going to work for actually doing anything, but it gives us a starting point. So you would obviously be filling in valid connection to your ILS. Then the other thing that you have to do is in indexing profiles, you will create a new one. So we will call this ILS. This will go in C data Aspen Discovery /ILS /mark is where I want to put that. Or wait, I need to give that a site, the name of the site too. So this would be bootcamp.localhost. Some of this information will change depending on your ILS. As you set it up, like if you're setting up a Koha site, it will automatically populate all of this information for you and create one that's valid for Koha. If you're setting up locally, then yeah, it's easiest to either copy it from your hosted site. So if you have a test site, you can copy it from that. The database connection information might not work just because of firewalls, but you can copy all of those settings. And same thing, it'll automatically set up the indexing profile for you if you're running Koha. So we make it really easy. Yeah, so you'll fill all of this information out. So define what item tags and record numbers and what subfield each of these bits and pieces of information is coming from. You might need translation maps depending on the ILS. So what record is the tag coming from? So a lot of times this will be, it's generally a 900 field or an 001. It depends on the ILS. So this is how you need to know where you need to know how your MARC records are exported. But and Koha does it for you, or the Koha install script does this all for you, or it can get copied from an existing system. So to run, so everything should start up for you automatically with Bitnami. The only thing you do need to make sure to run is, so I'm just going to open a new command line window. So after setting up Solar, we're going to go to C web, or wherever you have installed this, Aspen Discovery, sites, bootcamp.localhost. Within that, there will be a bootcamp.localhost.bat if it's installed on Windows, or a .shell if it's installed on Linux or Mac. So you will just run that. So run that start, and that starts Solar for you. So that just has to, like, you could set up a Windows task to start it automatically if you wanted to. Since I run so many, I don't start it automatically, but that will start Solar for you. And then right now there is nothing in the index, but so if we do a blank search, we're not going to find anything because we haven't indexed anything. When you are ready to index, we'll go back to Aspen Discovery, go to the code directory, and then depending on your ILS, so like if I'm running Koha, I will run Koha. So we're going to run java-jar Koha export.jar, and then the name of the site that we're doing. And this will then do all of the extraction from Koha, or you can switch and use different ILSs. So, or if you wanted to like get all of your overdrive materials, so like here I can do java-jar koha export.jar model.localhost is my local connection to our test instance. And that will automatically run everything. So it's not going to give you a lot of information here. There are a couple of errors that pop up at the beginning. They are irrelevant. It's a logger that we don't use that doesn't like to not be initialized. So let's see. So now if I go to my model site, so I'll go to the just admin home. Oh, I don't have, I will log in as my administrator. And then I can go to the indexing log for for the ILS. So, which in this case is Koha, and it says, hey, since the last time I ran this, 9 different things have changed, 9 were updated, and it's done. So you can see that. Obviously, the first time, there's a lot more that happens. Yeah. And then overdrive is similar process. You just go to that overdrive export and install from there. So what other questions? Anything else anybody wants to see? Well, let us know how the setups go, and we'll look forward to getting some code contributions. But all right, bye.